It's great to be back in the Northeast, which is home for me. It's very strange to be almost delivering a vote of thanks right after the Vice-Chancellor. I was in for about half of his talk and managed to scribble down some notes as he was speaking. I want to say, first of all, I'm here with the full agreement of my manager. And this is significant because a number of years ago at Nottingham Trent, we had a speaker from London Met came to talk to us about grey listing. And she was disciplined after she got home for being absent from campus without permission. So I thought, right, and I walked into my manager and said, here's a copy of my paper, this is what I'm delivering at Newcastle, and he couldn't have been less interested, so let's So the title of this talk was suggested by a hefty report from July of this year called The Metric Tide. And it's a report of a review body chaired by James Wilsden. And despite the report's chilling preface announcing a new barbarity in our universities, we continue to witness the misuse of metrics as a tool of management in UK higher education. Metrics hold real power. They're constitutive of values, identities, and livelihoods, wrote Wilsden. Universities should proceed with caution then. But for academic staff, audit has become a central organising principle of life in universities. Our working lives are structured around the requirement to undergo rituals of verification, as Power calls them. And there are as many anticipatory audits as there are demands for post hoc justification. Such is their prevalence that the behaviour of academics has been transformed so that they are interpolated primarily as auditees. We have benchmarks, metrics, and even dashboards now. And these are examples of calculative practices used apparently to measure and improve the productivity of academics. And this imposes a rationality whereby we face a future of algorithmic regulation, as Morozov calls it, and regimes in which employees are hierarchised according to metrics. University policy documents endeavour to justify these practices as essential and even empowering to academics. So, raising the bar is a sports metaphor, and that's going to be very familiar to everybody here today. As the Vice-Chancellor admitted, it was initiated by managerial anxiety amidst chatter about so-called bottom rustlers. That Newcastle has been lacking in competitiveness compared to other Russell Group universities. And I wonder, when exactly did academia become a combat zone? Probably about the same time as they started awarding stars to professors like US generals. When did the amount of grant money eclipse the actual content of the research? But raising the bar is also a coercively innocent phrase. It conveniently conceals all the judgment, hostility, pain and pressure that we know will follow it. Well, now that I've built a reputation for busting managerial myths about performance management, very kind Twitterati send me their university policy documents, and indeed I have yours. As a linguist, I feast upon their discursively encoded ideologies. It's the gift that keeps on giving, you know. But as a human being and a scholar and a friend of many victims, I weep at the cost for these individuals, but also for the future of universities. As the Vice-Chancellor made clear, it is totally driven by rankings. and status anxiety. There's not enough 4-starness, he says, and you need to be in the top half of the Russell group. Why? That's the question. So let's take a closer look at one of your documents. This was the Faculty of Humanities and Social Science document. And the first thing we notice is that these are expectations. They're not objectives, they're not targets, they're not goals. Expectations are much more finite and concrete, and they don't permit any of that worrying prospect of slippage. They are absolutes. Whatever the Vice-Chancellor says, to code these as expectations means they are absolute. So, the expectations on research active staff. So, by definition, if you don't meet them, you are not research active, despite any other form of evidence to the contrary. This document is focused on research performance, as this will determine our ranking in the next REF. So that really is the key, isn't it? We learn that's going to be increasing the number of 4-star outputs. And the parameters of performance are drawn so rigidly that they circumscribe any kind of professional autonomy or even what counts as academic labour. The only kind of output or performance that is counted is being refable, in the Vice-Chancellor's own words. So that guarantees that much of what you do as academics will be invisible. We have largely relied on REF 2014 entry as a proxy for reaching the minimum expectations for research outputs. This struck me as rather strange. I wondered how it was possible to make that judgment. How would a local assessor know what any of you scored in the REF for your individual outputs? Whatever management tell you, they don't have that information. It is not available. It was destroyed along with the REF. You cannot peg stars onto any individual. Stars and GPAs were awarded to units only. A criterion for a chair aspires to be in the top quartile for unit of assessment, or aspiring to 4-star. Well, first of all, how can everyone be in the top quartile, whether or not you're a professor? And with success rates as low as 8%, 12%, then that's an expectation you will probably not meet. And how do you indicate aspiration if you fall short? Are we now going to be judged on the breadth of our aspirations? Here's what the law says. If targets are unattainable, that leads to unmanageable levels of stress. This is really objective setting 101. Employers have a legal obligation to conduct risk assessments and prevent known causes of stress. When the Vice-Chancellor talks about SMART objectives, one of those key things is they should be attainable. If they're not attainable, then you don't have a SMART objective. You have something actually which is illegal. Employers are only in breach of their duty if they have failed to take reasonable steps in the circumstances to prevent the stress. Notice the word prevent, not alleviate, not support you, not offer mindfulness workshops or aromatherapy. They should prevent known causes of stress. And in any case, the workplace should be managed in accordance with the law and decent moral conduct. But the VC, he sort of put on this breastplate of righteousness by couching it under the discourse of support, which really translated to a little bit of funding, probably not enough. And of course that will be assigned competitively, as follows neoliberal doctrine, and you are individually responsibilised for meeting the expectations. And this of course does nothing to mitigate stress. In fact, the inevitable accountability and surveillance will exacerbate it. If we need evidence that targets and performance management cause insupportable stress, we should remember the tragic case of Stephen Grimm, who took his own life after being threatened with performance management procedures at Imperial College. One of the most upsetting things that came to light after Stephen's death was that his 80-year-old mother found out about the circumstances of his death from a blog by David Colquhoun. She later sent David some sketches done by her son as a teenager, and this is one of them. The coroner found Stephen's death to be needless, and Imperial College said that wider lessons would be learned. It's now very clear that the nation's vice-chancellors have been unwilling to face the facts. There is systematic mass victimisation of UK academics. This offers employers the opportunity to apply policies capriciously. Poor teaching scores may be overlooked in some cases, but lack of grant income is not. It's a licence for academic plankton to settle grudges or academic jealousies with their more talented underlings. And so an increasing number of academics are being marched through performance management processes in which their unique contributions are rendered insignificant and their imagined lapses are deemed incapability. The Vice-Chancellor denies that this is any kind of performance management. It will probably be designated something like mapping over from one kind of regime to another, and some of you will map over and some of you won't. They will avoid calling it performance management because that's got such a bad name now. But you better believe targets must be attained at each and every period of audit. You may find that international esteem is never arrived at, even though your books, even translations of them, are still on the shelves. Was it achieved and documented in the last 6 months? That's all that will matter. Professorship must be performed in tightly delimited ways, like a horse doing dressage. Threats of demotion will be made. It's like rescinding Mark Spitz's gold medals because he can no longer match Michael Phelps. I have to question whether these quantifiable targets meet management's declared aims of encouraging staff retention and offering a structure of support for academics. It's hard to imagine they could work positively in this way, when in some departments significant numbers of academics are immobilised by emotional and professional breakdown. In the fictions and contradictions of management polari, this is returned to the apparently delinquent employee as empowerment, even as managers arrogate the power to press the detonate button on careers. This mendacious discourse serves to absolve the perpetrators of torture from the shattering incapacitation these procedures invoke. The Vice-Chancellor couches all this as objectivity. Well, it isn't objectivity, nor is it objective setting. It is, in fact, objectification. Let's remind ourselves of Martha Nussbaum's original 7 features of objectification, originally applied to women, of course, but now let's look at them from the point of view of academics at Newcastle University. Instrumentality, being treated as a tool to reach a particular goal. At Newcastle, the function of an academic is to raise the bar, increase grant income, raise the university's position in the league tables. Denial of autonomy. Your activity and what counts as work is very tightly defined and controlled. Inertness. There are no human agents in the Newcastle documents on raising the bar. None at all. The grammatical subjects of sentences are this document, as if the power is inaugurated by a mere document. Or this aspect of our academic portfolio, or a detailed analysis of the results, and of course expectations. Those are the grammatical agents in the documents. Passive voice throughout, and just 3 instances of an unattributed pronoun, we. And we don't know who we is, because we is an inherently ambiguous pronoun. It can be used either inclusively, everybody in the room, or it can be used exclusively, senior management team. And we don't know who it designates. Looking at the contexts, we do not expect all staff to have equal strengths. We have largely relied on REF 2014. We will take early career researchers. It sounds pretty exclusive that the senior management team is taking on that pronoun we and retaining the prerogative of its exclusive attribution. Fungibility, interchangeability with other objects of the same type. How often have you heard managers say, we have an open door policy, if you don't like it, you can leave. And notice in human resource speak, there are no people with contributions to make, there are only roles, and roles can have the status of vacant or filled. Violability, something that can be broken, violated, smashed into. Many academics are now looking at ruined careers and broken ambitions as academia becomes unsustainable as a long-term career. Ownership, something that can be traded or commodified. We now hear about a transfer market for 4x4 professors, professors who have 4 4-star outputs. Denial of subjectivity. Your feelings don't need to be taken into account. Indeed, there is no way of expressing them because we're forced to account for our work in terms of management-defined metrics. This is known as illocutionary silencing. Illocutionary silencing is where any other discourse than that framed by management is deemed impermissible, literally unintelligible. We must undergo forcible alignment and compliance with managerial values, and our professional lives are dominated by the need to provide discursive evidence that we are compliant with the regime. This ensures that we conceive of ourselves in neoliberal terms. You must literally drink the Kool-Aid. And let's remember the first referent for this, the Jonestown massacre, where Jim Jones persuaded his 909 followers to drink Kool-Aid laced with cyanide. So it's a death cult, in other words. Recent research from Australia by Eva Peterson on the impact of aggressive performance management on early career researchers has shown that many of them struggle to articulate the value and worth of their work outside of the productivity discourse. The constraints of metrics also cause the content of the research to change, as researchers attempt to mirror what is currently hot and might get funding under the shifting priorities of research councils. And I've observed as well that we all tend to discount even solid scholarship, such as edited volumes or book reviews, if they're not deemed referable. And in the same way, we will learn to discount any work which is not judged, even by non-expert assessors, as worthy of a 4-star. As Peterson says of her informants, they and the substance of their work become easier to control. Objectification is the reality behind what we are supposed to believe is empowerment, a word now taking that slide into the semantic inversion prefigured by excellence and quality. But generations of women have been persuaded that objectification is empowering, so why not try it out on the nation's academics? That's you all. The targets reflect management's construction of the ideal employee who is never permitted to take rest. It's a job creation scheme for HR, as more and more academics will find themselves falling short of raising the bar. If we're lucky, they may embroil universities in grievances and libel suits, which will chasten management's love of robust metrical solutions to problems which do not exist. Vice-chancellors use a dip in metrics or the effects of incapacitation, what they call falling over in their jargon, as an occasion to axe courses, subjects, departments and schools. We're about to enter an era of manufactured instability in universities, in both staff turnover and academic offerings. Metrics, then, are unlikely to offer any of the certainties that their champions have promised, and doubly so because of the sheer irrationality that governs their application. The bar must be raised and raised again. No one must slip beneath the bar. There is only the bar, the metric that cannot lie, except it does. There's always a rush to judgment as metrics occlude any other evidence. This is the weak spot and the one that offers a route to resistance. What about content? What about imagination, passion, risk-taking that animate research? What about bright people having fortuitous conversations? There's been a hollowing out of the sense of purpose of universities as power is skewed towards a managerial function. It doesn't have to be like this, and it's our job to take every opportunity to make this clear. The Vice-Chancellor, I noticed, was playing the Tina game, there is no alternative. That's the way the world is, he was saying, as if he has no hand in this at all, no agency. Good work cannot be sustained under these conditions of pressure and surveillance. Academics are not servo systems whose online functioning can be monitored and tweaked in response to new demands. Consider this reality. Academics, with all their strengths and imperfections, are the people who attract students. I gift several Saturdays a year to my institution because, it seems, I'm able to persuade students to study there. Nobody ever signed up because of the award-winning human resources team. Or the management team here, I think, wasn't it? Senior management. Or was swayed by the robustness of the improving performance procedure. So let's indeed raise the bar. Let's raise the bar for decency, humanity, respect and trust. Let's realise that academic staff don't have either resources or the capacity to keep expanding their workloads and output every year. And please, let's bear in mind the human consequences of systems that push people above, over and beyond. And let's return to that meaning of we, and allow ourselves to feel that it includes everyone who works in a university and not allow it to pertain exclusively to management. I hope perhaps one day Vice-Chancellors and their senior management teams will wake up and remember they work for universities. They are not the university. Thank you very much.